Well, hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela, and basically I like to draw. And I draw every day in the morning just to warm my muscles up and to get into practice when I'm working on contracts or just for whatever arty projects I plan to do for the day. Throughout January, I've been taking part in the Fragments of Your Imagination challenge, hosted on the 7F5R Facebook group. And today, although it's the 30th of January, I've got the last two fragments to do because it feels fitting that I start something new on a Monday, because Monday feels the start of a new week. Sunday feels the end of a week. And so I thought I'd do that. So this video today is going to be a very quick look at these two fragments and then a look back at the whole month. So it could end up being quite a long video, but I'll have a look and see. It's just a recap, I suppose, and going over what I've done and perhaps thinking about where do I go from here. So I have got pens at the ready to draw some of these patterns. So with no further ado, let me just turn this book slightly and you can see that the fragment for day 30, which is today, is Ladybug, or based on Ladybug by Shie Naritomi at CZT. And this is kind of her original pattern, or the original fragment of Ladybug. And it took me a while to work my way through to get to variations. I have to admit, this one was one of those ones this morning I thought, what on earth can I do with this? How am I going to work with this? But the only way to do that is to work with it, is to try things out and see what happens. So very simple variations. It's a really simple fragment to draw. It's just a circle, a line through the middle, and then semicircles, a full circle, and a couple of dots wherever. The fragments are where the variations are where things start to get interesting. I did a lot based on circles or squish circles, squeeze sideways circles, they become ovals. Thinking about how I can alter this to look like a head. So I put the semicircular shape upside down and outside the circle. Here I created this kind of almost triangular shape with curving insides for the head at the top and a smaller version at the bottom, as I have done here. I have to admit, I do like drawing insects, so I think my experience of drawing whimsical insects has influenced this as well. Leaving the circles open, simplifying it, but auraing this line, this central line. I like this. I just like the feel of these kinds of borders or stripes, I suppose. And this one, I auraed the outside. I'm not so sure about that one. Not in this case. This one, I put a series of dots there because I squashed the circle a bit. This one is kind of like this, except that we've got crescent moons on either side. And that's quite fun, even though you can see how it started from here, but developed. This one I like as well, where instead of putting that central circle, I've split it and put it on either side. And I really do like that. This one's a bit more ornate. I've woven the auraed strips, bands, stripes in a hurry kind of fashion. A hurry is a Zentangle pattern. And that creates something that's really quite intricate and yet quite easy to do. I suppose it's also a bit like Aruka's as well. A lot of these patterns overlap. It's the shape of lines and how you arrange them that matters. Beginning to understand this a lot more with all of this. Again, dots left open, but just a double line there. It's almost like it's got a little shirt on. Variations. Instead of solid circles, just leaving those little highlights, they look more like spheres that are floating there. Well, you have to try things sometimes. This is a leaf shape, and a leaf shape would work because a leaf shape is really a circle that's had its end pinched. And this one is more of a ginkgo leaf, I suppose. Well, not quite, but it's more of a triangle with a stubby top. And triangles will work nicely. This one's really nice though, because I've ended up with what looks like wings beginning to open on either side. Semicircles, ladybugs, or in the UK we call them ladybirds, but the ladybirds on the side. So if I slip into ladybirds, you know why. I think these need to be curled in a little bit, but you know, it starts off. Then I went to squares. Oh, chunkamunka insects or bugs. And I even put this on the side. Here we've got what looks like a Mickey Mouse head here. I thought I'd put some eyes on, but this one works quite nicely with the head sticking out. And again here, prefer this one to that one perhaps. I prefer this kind of shape where the head is. And this looks a bit like apples, because instead of drawing those two lines in, I just put semicircles in. So this looks like a slice of an apple core, you know, an apple from the core out. But it's fine, it works. There. Trying different shapes instead of dots, so stars and hearts and various others. I even put a flower in there and a trefoil kind of thing going on. Very, very organised. Very, very stripy and dotty. And then these, I went back to circles and I think I drew this one and thought, oh gosh, that looks like wings. I made this very much bigger at the bottom. So I did this one and I drew the head first, and then these two leaf shapes coming out like wings, and then just a circle at the bottom and split it. Really easy and simple to draw a ladybug. So that's day 30. I'm going to turn this around, make you seasick, but I'm not going to apologise. This is day 31. And it's fragment E4 from the Zentangle primer, but done in a triangular sort of way. It looks a bit like the shape, I don't know, a wafer or an ice cream cone or something. The top part of the triangle is curved outwards, so it's that kind of shape. Nice and simple variations. On the top here, instead of having the straight line, I put a little dent in it. I realised, oh, I've created a heart. So just a simple change like that. Here, this central bit I've taken up to the line. I put a straight line across. And instead of this pointy bit, I turned it into a circular bit, and I ended up with a bug. Oh, yep, we had a bug. And because they do look a bit like bugs, just a bit. But there's that one, but no aura around there. Squares, I've drawn them as diamonds, but they are squares, exactly the same. So a whole host of them here, similar to these and not. And then I did this in a square, so I did it in the original kind of shape. And here I changed this to a circle. Excuse me. But I made these a lot wider. I don't know if you can see. On the originals, they're bales. You know, the bale shape, which is sort of like half a rice shape, half a leaf. Here I made them much wider at one end. So they take up more space. And in this one, I changed the shape a bit. Perhaps not perfectly well, but enough to remind me. This one, I did those kinds of shapes where they're narrow at one end and wider at the other. But then I auraed within, so I got these nested bands, as it were, before I put that little bit inside. And then, of course, that space allows for other shapes to go in, so I popped a seed pod in there. But you could put anything. And I tried it in the original shape. This one is kind of like those furls that are used sometimes in leaves, except I made this length really long and this one much shorter, and I tried to have, rather than a point, a bit more of a curvy shape, and it feels that we've got something folding and curling round. So I tried it in a square, and of course it works in a square. And this is from yesterday, the ginger java. by Donald Wilker. I had to think hard for his surname then. And so I popped that in there because that's what this shape reminded me of. Instead of these, I put spirals in, and really, you know, sort of like different kinds of spiral shapes and broader, just widening things or shortening things and playing around with them. And so then I went to other shapes. So a teardrop shape. With a teardrop, you've got choices of where you put the bales, because so far everything you need two sides that are adjacent, and so you don't have many options. With teardrops, you could start from the point and go out with them, or from the bottom and go out. A different kind of feeling at the end of it, different kind of pattern. Not quite sure which one I prefer. Almost this one, I think. Almost this one, because it's so similar, I think, to these, but this does give that different kind of feel. I guess we could do that with this one, this shape, if we pop them across that line, but it would feel awkward. This is a square, but here I started putting a rod in the centre. It's the only way I can describe it. It's sort of like, it is a rod with curved ends, and then drew the halves of the fragment on each side. And again, that, and with this one, that gives something different, something for me to think about. Circle, well, you can pop these side by side wherever you like around the circle, but there's a lot more space to play with here, a lot more. And that means you can get fancier patterns in there, or shapes. So I've got these lovely spiral stems, mucas, a variation on muca, and a flower growing out there. Here, I don't know what on earth I put here. I think I wanted it a lot broader, actually. So let me just have a look at what I can do here. Bear in mind, I haven't got my glasses on the other side. Well, that looks a bit, well, it looks a little bit healthier, but not really. But I know what I want to do there. And this is the same thing, but with a circular pattern there. I had to try a heart. And again, you could, I only popped the auras at the bottom on this one, not the auras, the bales there. Put my glasses on, and let's try, move the pen loop out the way. Let me try popping these in the corner, and I don't think it works as well. But sometimes you've just got to try. You end up with something with angry looking eyes. Semicircles. I prefer these bales on the outside edges rather than the bottom, though the bottom is useful. It's got its value, I think. And if we're going to use a circle, I'm thinking now, see, paper at the ready. So if we had a circle for this pattern and split it, then I think these could create a nice pattern within, like so. Got an hourglass shape here, haven't I, going on? I should be able to work that out in my mind, but it's so much easier to draw it. And again, if we pop two of these, if I pop this one together, pop this in. So here's the central bit, and this time I'm actually going to put 3 lines in. And let's pop one of these there. And I can aura that. And let's have a look. And that could work quite nicely as a kind of fragment as well, I think. Ooh, I hope you saw that. Sorry if you didn't. But pop them together. So by joining, oh God, I thought this might have been a bad idea. By joining two of these together to get a circle, we end up with this kind of shape, and joining two of those together, we end up with that fragment. So it could be fun to work with half fragments as well, I think. Oh, you know, or joining fragments together. This one I had to go with one of those weird shapes in there, and it does look like we're looking down into something, and I popped a circle around it. This was something I did in Moonberry, and popped the little moonberry in the middle of that, which was fun. This one I took one of these here and extended it in that kind of crystalline kind of way that was done in the last 12 Days of Zentangle, and they did that, what was it, with Cubine. And then this one is just an ordinary triangle, and with spiraling shapes here. You could turn them into mukas, and then something in the middle just to see what happens. I didn't go with many asymmetrical shapes because the awkwardness like this of where you pop things, it just doesn't feel right. I think a pentagon, perhaps. Could a pentagon work? It could, I suppose. We have a go. Move this out of the way just for a moment. I think a pentagon could work depending on where you pop. Well, it doesn't depend on where you pop them, but you have them door to door, and then yeah, that would work quite nicely, I think. So the pentagon would work. Hexagon, we're getting close to circling, to being a circle really, but I'm sure there are so many more variations there. So if you really want me to draw more of these for you to see, then just pop it all in a, I don't know, I managed to zoom in there, must have hit something. Oh, I know it, I must have hit it with this, but so if you've missed any of the drawing, let me know. If you'd like me to draw any of these or to go through this in more detail, let me know. So let's have a quick flip through. So beware, we're going right back to the beginning of this, where I've got a blank page, because these are the extra pages that go with well. We started the 1st of January off with well here, and well is one of my favourite patterns, and I got quite a few variations, and I also changed it quite a bit to get floral patterns as well, and quite a lot of them. And I enjoyed drawing this, I do have to say that. I think you can tell from the number of pages, it's one of my favourites. But this was where I really started getting my head around the idea of using different shapes and forms, and this rod to split things. I absolutely love this pattern. These third lines that go to the side, this actually looks fab without them. So that's well. Day 2 was this variations of poke leaf, and I came up with some here that I really like. This kind of one I found fascinating, where I've got half leaves on the side. To be reticulated, it's sort of like you have to be a little bit careful about it, but it was quite fun to actually pop shapes inside, you know, fill the patterns inside, something a bit different. This one would be one that would be easy to be repeated in a pattern, and they can be taken as triangular fragments as well. So I had lots of cute things appearing like this one, and so on. Used a lot of gold early on when I was adding colour. And this was the sheet I drew with you, because I think I did a lot of these off camera. So I drew things there. January the 7th was Fragment X7, and seed pods are my favourite, but varying it, I didn't stick with just circular forms. I went to look at how we can pop them in squares, in triangles, in hexagons, in circles, as these crystalline shapes, starting to off-center things as well, working out, well, what happens if, instead of keeping everything very much in the middle, we alter it. So I was looking at things like this one, adding these furls so it looks like, you know, the seed pod is opening in some way. It's curling open. And did I pop one in there? Can't see that I did, but I know further along I look at the idea of popping these shapes on the edge of shape, you know, edge of a shape as well, which is also quite fun. Is it over there? No, it's not on that. Yeah, that sheet is putting it right off centre, right towards the edge as well, which is quite a lot of fun. January the 13th was January the 4th was J13. This lovely triangular fragment. So it's quite simple. You've got these furl shapes, these inverted curvy V's holding an orb or a bead in place, and I just looked at how you could vary that, but not just in triangles, which are the most elegant form of it, I have to say, but in other forms as well. So that was fun. And just to mention, there are videos of all of these on my YouTube channel. I don't think I haven't missed a day, although I'm missing the 31st tomorrow, so I've got to come up with something to do. Perhaps I'll have a day off from YouTube, who knows. Fragment D23 here turned out to be a really interesting fragment, especially when I got to this. I've fallen in love with this, and it's something I want to use a lot, I think, in my work. Either in this sort of form without the bit sticking out, or this one. There is just something lovely about it. Do it all the way, do Diva Dance all the way round, and it just feels lost. This blank area is what's, you know, this empty area is what's needed. And these ones that look like we've almost wire wrapped it or wrapped thread around through a hole in the middle, those also I particularly love. And this one too. So I've got plenty here to work with. My big problem is I've got so many books and places where I've got things like this. It's having the time to go through them, and I'll come back to that. Hopefully I'll remember to come back to that at the end. If not, I will definitely in another video. This is day 5 with Zach. Lovely pattern. I think this is one of my favourites here, is where you have a thicker stripe where you can put patterning, just one. This one's quite fun, but this one is a better way of adding contour lines. See these ones, this one, especially where you've got colour in the other sections. These ones turned out to be fun and interesting. And in a square, they're quite interesting. There's a lot of interest there. It's me working out how I could make use of them, and I did more on another page as well. When I go on to 2 pages, that shows just how flexible and easy it is to create variations. Got some lovely shell type things going on here. Yeah, and more. It's that bar through the middle again, see? It really can help make a variation work, I think, is to have that split there. I've used it in straight forms through here, but my mind's now ticking over, well, what if I made it into an S shape or a different shape, a curve? So that could be interesting. 7th was Dreamed X by Debbie New. Zach is by Susan Yo. Have I missed out anybody I should have mentioned? Not sure. Well, I think all the others are, yeah, they're all, this is Second one by a CZT rather than Zentangle themselves. And you can see the influence of others going on here. But this is the first one. I worked this way on the page and just varying the shapes, ordering these, taking them off center, turning them almost into spirals, close towards one end. They're almost like hands folding over, filling them with patterns. This spiraling shape and filled with spirals, and bringing out that central area was fun. Changing the shape of them again, and then trying these ideas out in different shapes. In squares it works quite nicely just as 4 round, but 2 opposing, that hugging kind of thing, when you put them together you get these lovely heart shapes then. And I put rods between them, I left a little gap, but they're sort of like an interesting thing. I'm using these 2 shapes, you know, the shapes coming from the corners, and instead of repeating them round, I think I definitely did this one with you. And then all the different shapes. Circles are particularly lovely. And with the circle, I much prefer 3 of these than 4. It's that odd number that makes things more pleasing. I do like that. I even worked in a weird shape, in a, you know, one of these Pangea style shapes. So that is really interesting how that worked. Nida by Stephanie Jenner was the 8th of January. So this is the original pattern. And I worked with that through others. I got some very strange things like this one and this one. But overlapping these little furls was quite interesting. You end up with something almost like you've boxed something precious up. And I have fun blending this one as well. I have fun blending jelly rolls, stardust, and the metallic pens to create these metallic gradients and sparkly gradients on there. The 9th of January was Cars by Emiko Kaneko. I struggled with this one, drawing this one, but eventually pennies dropped and I managed to get something like it, and I really did have a lot of fun with this one. You can see the different ways once I understood what it was meant to be, how it was meant to go together, then the imagination or creativity began to kick in. And yeah, but that was a tough one for me to work with the deconstruction. It took a lot of time before things just clicked into place, and I had trouble afterwards drawing it as well. Day 10 was fragment B21 from the Zentangle Primer, and as simple as it is, I was thinking, oh, what am I going to do with this? And then of course you get all of these auras, and if you leave wide gaps you've got space to put things in, and then you can do it in the way that it's done in Zentangle, where you have random placed dots and you just draw circles around them until they touch each other, and then you aura around those shapes and so on, so you end up with something that's agate like. But I like to draw them in piles as well, layer them up, start with one that's going to be, some that are on the top, and then fit others underneath them. And having ones like this that seem to be sticking out of was quite fun. That's all dependent on how you add the shadow. But adding these patterns is really lovely. And these little kinks in the circles add those. It's very much a Naki kind of thing. Naki is a fragment that comes later on, but you get these, it almost feels like you've got folding going on. And the shadows can play with that, how you put shadow in this. So it's the shadowing. This is where the importance of adding shadow really hit home to me, I think, or began to hit home, of how that can really bring something that's very flat like this, can add interest and dimension by thinking about adding shadow like this or like this. And if you've got it in layers, where you pop them in the shadows in the layers. So there's a couple of extra little sheets that I know I drew these on camera with you. The 11th of January was Fragment H16, which just flowed, sort of. It was nice. I like changing the bale shapes, the rice shapes, into leaf shapes, and then having it like a propeller and making the leaves as broad as I could so I could get some pattern in the centre, very thin little rice shapes so you could pop things behind them so they held them in place and so on. That was quite fun. And finding a way to leave space between them for extra bits. And working with different shapes, it was the same kind of ideas that in all of these I had the leaves, well, nearly all of them, the squares, I started changing things a bit, but pointing towards the corners. In a triangle, I tried that and there just wasn't that much space. Again, it's being aware of how much space you need. Put these in a square and it'll work, but you get these big spaces around it to do things with, or you create them into shapes like this, and this is where actually these do belong. They don't belong with well. That one belongs with well. This one belongs here. I think, well, it's where it's going now, because I think a lot of these are more reminiscent of this than they are of well. That some of them are well, some are not. The beauty of disc-bound journals is all I'm going to say. And this idea of having these rice shapes in a flower kind of pattern worked really nicely. Working on a bigger scale, it's easier to get details in. So these furls that go in, and auras, inner auras, extra little shapes at the bottom and so on. That was quite fun. And of course in the different shapes they'll fit in as well. Interesting in the weird shape, the very random shape. Awkward to fit into a polygon shape, sort of like it looks like a segment of an orange or clementine. But can be done, you just have to think about where they'll sit best. In fact, where the corners are. You've got two corners here and you just imagine there's one up there. Or perhaps just put two in. Actually, just two in would work quite nicely. So let's just have a look. So I'm going to start one here and one there, and then that. I haven't got my glasses on, so it's going to be a weird shape, but that would work then with these, that shape between. Wonder, let me just do another one. And I did those from there. What about if I did them from this place? That would fit in. But yeah, so it's thinking about the amount of space you want around them and how they'll look. This was, I don't know what was going through my head when I did these two. And this one is this one. I've already done that, so yeah. I do like these ones, the asymmetrical flowers in a circle. Always had a soft spot for them. Day 12 was Daylise by Debbie New. Again, it was one where I was thinking, what can I do with this? But it turned out to be quite fruitful once I worked out, well, how do I draw this? How can I change how I draw it? And some of these variations over here, I like that one. I preferred using a spiral on one side of the line. These were really interesting. That one particularly. But the ones where it's almost like you've got pages, you know, sort of like almost like an opening book, the corners in this case. And I got to these as well from that. And some more here, because I drew more. And this one goes with this. Shantara, another one by Debbie New. This one took me a while to work out, but in the end I got there, because I much prefer things that are symmetrical in shape that I can then make asymmetrical by placement, I suppose. And I think I got some nice variations or things that please me. I like these ones where everything is centered, where it can look like you've either looking through a piece of metal that's got a hole in it, or something raised up. However, whichever way you put the shadow on, again, shadow makes things appear differently. This one where they're mirrored within the square was interesting. See all the variations I did up here trying to get my head around it. It's a lovely pattern, but it's one of those ones where it took me a while. These I like as well. But this is similar to what I've been doing today. The very last fragment, day 31. Just checking, that felt very thick. Day 14 was fragment C24, and it does remind me of lily pads or pennywort leaves and nasturtium leaves, but also if you look at the bottom of a mushroom, the gills. So I had to draw something that looked like a lily leaf. But this was fun because it's radiating lines, so you can change them by weighting the end, perhaps putting a circle in the middle like I did there, putting little bits between the lines, how you shadow the line. This one was fun because I made the lines like roots or like branches in a tree, almost like you're looking up from the base of a tree upwards, or from the, on top of the crown, so you can see the branches spreading out. And that one looks like spokes of a wheel in a weird way. This reminds me, I think it's Pepper is the Zentangle pattern, and this is where contouring lines, curving the lines, really came into play to give this feeling of volume to the shape. And this one resulted in some really interesting patterns. So I took multiple centres, and I ended up with things that looked like mountains around a night sky. This one was a crazy kind of Knightsbridge, and it looked a right mess when I started, but as soon as I put the black and white squares in, or the black in, it suddenly started to make sense. Hollybore from two centres. That was fun. You can see how I varied different things there, and different shapes like ginkgo leaves and so on. This I found interesting, was having a line going off in one direction and then radiating out in the opposite. So you have these gaps here, and some of them looked like shells, so I popped them there. So you can see this kind of idea with one line to that circle and then lines radiating out. It's quite a bit of fun. And it actually led to this one as well, which looks like a turbine or a fan blades. Day 15 was fragment C14, which I think leads to a tangle pattern called Mia. I made a note of that. Interesting, because it was one of those ones where I thought, oh, what do I do with this? But some of my favourite ones are these here, where you've got a section where I increased the waviness of, instead of just an S curve, I went to town with multiple lumpy bumpy bits. And this feels almost like waves on the sea, or the sea and the sand that has, got patterns in the sand left by wave action. Sand ripples from the ripples of waves, oddly. This one's almost like land overlying some sea or a river. This one is the Diva Dance, which I really like. And then looking at different numbers of these curvy lines and seeing, you end up with cliffs. Very, very graphic. But then in other ways, splitting these up and seeing what happens. I end up with this seed pod here with things that look like clamshells in this case. Very odd looking lump of rock that's been sculpted and worn away in places. This one was interesting. How did I do that? Oh, it's the S shapes and then radiating out from these points, the lines, and I end up with these really interesting shapes in the middle. But that was a fun one to do, and these here. And again, it's that importance of how you add shadow to really give volume to these. It's sunshiny today, it's lovely. Perk was a big surprise. Yes, the page is upside down in here because I didn't pay attention to where I wrote things, but it was absolutely a surprise as to what happened with Perk. This down here was the original starting fragment, and I just saw what I could do with it. My favourites, I like this one, I love that one, that one. They were fun. Putting perks around the outside of a fragment, and that started off a new train of thought. Oh, I could put them around the outside as well. Of course I can. I do that all the time, but I hadn't made that sort of like conscious. I hadn't become consciously aware of doing it. This one as well here, this was fun. Squarish perks and long thin perks in bands. Different textures, all perked. But lots more potential for that. This was Birthday by Jessica Davis. And this was the starting pattern. And they all relate back to this in some way or another. I even ended up with this by changing this overlying shape here. But it was a lot of fun. So that's Birthday. Moonberry, oh my goodness, did I fall in love with some of these variations. It even led to a poppy pod along the way and various other things. Like things you might find at the bottom of the ocean or in a coral reef, filling borders with moonberry. This is a particular favourite, I think, because it's got that hint of diva dance on it. This too. I haven't drawn this very well, but I can see how that can work as a flower. And it's so hard to keep all of these ideas in my head. It's great to have something to refer back to get that inspiration. And this is something perhaps I need to learn to do more often, is to go through these and pick out a few fragments that I would like to use in a drawing and just go with it and see what happens, whether I use those actual fragments or whether I use a variation of them. Now I've even got cupcakes and a really tall cupcake here with this one, and sort of like little flowers, little flower garlands. But a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed them all, but some I did enjoy a little bit more than others. The next fragment was an ode to triangles. And I think this is by Debbie New as well. I could be wrong. And you look at this and you think, I thought, what can I do with that? Well, I did a lot. I think I did a lot. I think I did good here. And I've got some lovely patterns, fragments came out of it along here that are in layers. So it's like you've got one layer with holes looking through to the bottom to what's underneath. And this one almost has 3 layers because that could be turned into like a little lump up dome. Dome is the word I'm looking for. But these lovely flowers that came from it, almost like 3 circles there. Almost. See the gaps? Strictly circles. Optical illusions I was talking about with this one as well. And how this translates to other shapes as well. This was fun, because adding shadow to that will really bring out that spherical shape if you're careful. It actually needs some shadow right along just the very edges of that shape above, and the same here. I missed those out. 20 was Ivory, another tangle fragment, or fragment based on a tangle by Debbie New. Oh, this one caused me no end of difficulty because I just could not see. I still find it incredibly hard to see where the ivy patterns are in this and how to construct it that makes sense. I mean, I was even trying it here and I ended up with a pair of fish. In the end, I decided, okay then, there's 2 ivy leaves there. I did see it for a fleeting instant, but as soon as I looked back again, I couldn't see the ivy leaves. Okay, there's 2 ivy leaves there. Right, I'm going to work with ivy leaves in fragments. And that's what I did. I just used that as my starting idea. And the one thing, though, I haven't done that I want to do is these fragments here that take that central bit, the aura around it, and the line there. Those are interesting because this looks very much like a stone that's had something chipped out of it. And so that's something I want to have a look at. So it was awkward, but I got there. In my way, my own way, which apparently is how it should be taken. So Debbie reassured me. Thank you, Debbie. They're all starting points, every fragment. But I tried to stay within the essence of the fragment for each day. Sai by Miki Yamamoto was the pattern for day 21. And it's this, it's my favourite kind of flowery thing. Hydrangea flowers, whatever. And I ended up with this. It's the idea of adding something around the original fragment to make a new fragment. I'd term it a motif because it would be something strong and bold that would be used, whereas fragments tend to make it more of a pattern, but it's still a fragment. So these are all fun, but because I use these as motifs as well, but all variations on the theme, putting them into different shapes and changing what's in the centre. This one's quite nice, spirals. Oh look, it's a moonberry type one, using that star, Artwyrd star in the middle, which was lovely. Okay, day 22. Day 22, I did a ton of extra fragments. I had got to the fragment for the day. I just thought there's nothing I can do with this. It was a simple circle with some shading in it, so it looked like a bead of some kind, but it could be a gemstone, it could be there was another version which suggested, and I thought that they don't really interest me, so I'll have a look at some of the extra fragments. There was a couple I didn't do, but I did an awful lot. So each row is a different fragment, so I did quite a few. I think I did 14 out of the 24 fragments, extra fragments. So, and I went through these in a video on day 22. And of course, they're all photographed and up on my social media. Yep, more fragments. And I did draw some of them on camera, so I popped those in as well. So loads and loads of them. They're all lovely in their own way. This one I like. I love this shape in the middle. This was a fun one because I ended up drawing a diamond. Not that I'm a fan of diamonds. I like this one as well, and I want to work with that a bit more. I just haven't done so yet. Doesn't mean I won't. I will do one day. This pattern, Sharpens by Ildiko Boyd, turned out to be a really interesting pattern, and it's where I got this raggedy edged inner aura, if you like, from, which has played a feature in my work for a while since. I kept the essence of it, even though some of them look like they bear no relationship. It was that wiggly line and realising that if we put all of these together like this, we'd have that wiggly line here, raggedy line. And I went with that and came up with things like this. So that was fun. Big gap here. I did run out of ideas with this one. But I think this is one that will really stick with me. Day 24 was Gamusinos by Oswaldo Bibano. Lovely pattern, this. And I really enjoyed working with it. But I quickly dropped the extra bits there and kept what was underneath this central band. Although I did change sort of the shape of the band, or, you know, it's how symmetrical it was or not, and where its position was. And had a lot of fun putting things underneath it. So these patterns I just love. Okie dokes, that was day 24. Day 25 was 2M and 3F, which stands for 2 mucas and 3 flux. So I did work with 2 mucas and 3 flux, and I came up with some nice variations. I came up with butterflies. Popping 3 flux and 2 mucas into a pentagon and some other shapes was quite challenging, but triangles were nice. I like that one. That one worked nicely, and that one did as well. This is nice as well. You know, I changed the shape of the muca. I got to put a frilly edge on it. And I prefer ones where we've got graphic black rather than a textural pattern. But you've got to try them to see, haven't you? This one looks almost like snowdrops or flowers ready to open, which is quite cute. So that was fun, very graphic. Doodah was one. For me, it's an iconic kind of border pattern that I use quite a lot. I enjoy putting it into arches and in borders, I just really like it. I like the simplicity of it, but the complexity of the simplicity as well. But it was put in a circle, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what do you do? I actually had trouble drawing it in a circle. I had to resort to pencil guidelines to help me, which was fine. Don't get me wrong, that's fine. But dear goodness. I got there in the end. I think I played with borders far more than I did individual fragments. But it's a pattern where it from going from a border, it became a texture and a contouring kind of fragments. Those lines started to add contour or volume, and it was shadow that really worked with it. Shadow and highlights, like here or here or here, just to lift it out. On their own, they look very flat and uninteresting, and that was really where the importance of shadow hit home to me. Really, really did. Tripoli was the next pattern for day 27. Interesting, but this Tripoli, that the Y shape that's in the middle of it is off center, so it's uneven. And so that was a different way of working with this. I think my favourite versions were where I put triangle or square or some other shape in the middle and had these lines radiating out. It just helped. And this one, that one was a surprise, where I popped these curved auras in. It created something that was really quite interesting. I haven't seen that, haven't done that. But this was fun with the betweeds. On these arucas, one section with arucas in. That was fun. Again, that's betweed, and that's where I finally betweed clicked with me, how you work in a big space that isn't a distinct triangle. It's really 2 triangles put together. Again, shadow is what helped to add things here. With this, I wanted to see how I could get these patterns to match up, how you could do that in a reticulum. So that was fun. Distorted sea urchins. Yesterday's not yesterday's, day before, was Ginger Java. And this one did take me in interesting ways. And I've got these little doodly things here. These, I'd call them finials, because this is a finial. It's a little decoration you put on a point, on a, you know, something on the roof, you know, the top of a tile, the edge of a tile on a roof, on the corner of a roof, a finial, or on the top of a, you know, one of the, oh, what do you call them? You know, on stairs we've got the stair posts, newels, but the biggest newel, the one at the end, you put, you know, something fancy's carved there, a finial, or on the top, at the end of any piece of wood. So they are all kinds of shapes you could pop there. And these are just a few that came to mind as I was doing this, because I realised I was using this particular one an awful lot. I did use others. We've got sweeter cards, a suit of cards here. So we've got heart club, heart diamond, and a spade as well. So, you know. And then this is day 28, because I popped day 28, pages of day 28 facing each other, because this was Naki. And I remember Naki from the Inktober challenge, and I ended up doing about 3-4 pages in my sketchbook of it, because I'd not come across it before, and it took me a while to get to grips with it. This one in a fragment with the boundary around it just led to other possibilities. And again, I've got these arukas and these layers. I didn't do any outside patterning, but there's just so much could be done. And again, I know I've only, you know, touched the surface of this, scratched the surface of it. Hollybough was quite fun in this as well, especially in these weird shapes, these Pangea shapes. So this was a lot of fun. And there's today's Ladybug and Fragment E4. And again, we've got this bright light coming in. The sun's finding its way in through any crack, which is great, because I'll be opening my curtains again once I've finished this video. So that's a very quick look through, but I'll just say that there are videos for each and every one here. And I have got a plethora of pages, tons of them, look at that, in my sketchbook in here. And I don't know how many individual fragments I've come up with. If I just do a quick count of this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There's got to be about 40 or 50 different fragments on that page, some more, some less. So if we take an average, say, of 40, that's a lot of fragments in a month. That's a lot of fragments. 40 times 30, that's 400 times 3. That's 1,200 fragments, roughly, as an estimate this month. So yeah, that's a lot. A lot of fragment variations. Yeah. God blimey. What next though? Because I've come to the end of this, so what do I do next? The answer is I'm not entirely sure yet. I really do enjoy working with variations of patterns and fragments, so that may be something I continue to do, perhaps not every day. I'd like to spend time drawing with you and doing things so you can draw along. But I'm not quite sure about anything else, whether there'd be an interest in things like adding colour. It's not a skill I have. Drawing things more in a way I draw them, my entangled kind of way. Or I don't know. I really am at a loss, and I shouldn't be, because I'm quite creative. but we'll see what happens. I may take a day or two off, or perhaps a bit longer, to think about this, to see what comes up. But if I do that, don't think I've gone away. I'll be back. I will. And I wish I had a comment section or, a community section in my YouTube, but I don't have enough followers or hours watched yet. I'm about halfway there to what I need. So I need about 1,000 subscribers and, about 10,000 hours watched, I think it is. Or is it 1,000 hours? Something like that. Whatever it is, I'm about halfway through both. So it'd be lovely to get that. So I can, if nothing else, I can have the community section and let you know of things that are going on and ask. I don't know if you can have polls there. Ask. Yeah, I think you can. But yeah, so my request in the comment section is, what next? What would you like to see next from me? It'd be lovely. So until then, please look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now. Bye.